Guys, welcome back to the show. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm joined in studio with Cage Warriors MMA fighter and amateur double champion and the Four Nations silver medalist, Jordan Little. Mr. Little, how are you doing? How are you feeling this evening?
I'm good, thank you. I'm doing really well. Yourself?
I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm great. How are you feeling in the run up to fight night, which is literally 2 or 3 sleeps away?
Yeah, I'm feeling great. Just ticking along right now on my water load, keeping myself just prepared really. I've done the hard part, and for me the water load and the water cut is easy, so this is a nice chilled week.
So I want to talk about your opponent first. What do you make of him? But I mean, I can't really talk about him without kind of also touching on your fight record. Although I know you only just started your professional MMA record career, but your amateur results are really really impressive. You've got a lot of fights beneath your belt, good number of wins there. I looked at your opponent overall, I can say that you are the fighter who comes up with much more experience.
Yeah, 100%. I don't think it matters who I fight. I'm always going to be the one with the more experience. A lot of fighters in the UK scene don't do a big amateur career. I think unless I'm fighting someone who's from out of the country, America, maybe Europe, they're going to have more experience like me. But in the UK itself, a lot of amateurs rush to go pro.
No, I, c- I can see that. But I mean, is that something that you rushing to go pro to turn pro as soon as possible? I mean, okay, you might say that for a fighter that's kind of started fairly late in their career, maybe their late 20s, early 30s even. But would you say that's something that you agree with, or would you are you glad with how you did things, how the route that you took, how you built up your amateur record first before turning professional?
Yeah, I didn't start too young. I mean, I was 23 when I started training MMA. I had my first fight like a year later, so I wasn't the youngest. I wasn't old, but it wasn't too early, and I decided to take that longer route, get more experience, put myself against the best in the world, going to IMAF, the Four Nations, competing on the Emma stage as well. Um, it gives you that preparation. I've been against everything that I need to go against in the amateur scene, so that when I turn pro, I'm prepared for it. That there's nothing that I haven't dealt with before that I can't deal with now.
And since turning professional, and okay, some may say this is a kind of a silly question to ask, and maybe it's an awkward question to ask, but um, have you noticed any changes as to, well, maybe pressure? Do you feel more pressure to perform better in the cage to get the win in the bag, and even to the extent of how you're treated by your agents, managers, and even the promoters of the brand?
No, I don't feel like there's any more pressure. You know, I think I've got that much cage time and that much time preparing that I don't really feel any pressure in it. Like when I had my pro debut, I was relaxed, I was excited. I knew I was going out against I was the away fighter going against a guy from Glasgow in Glasgow. So if anything, I had all the pressure on me and I felt none of it. I went out there, I'm smiling, I'm enjoying myself, getting like I was just absorbing everything. And then when it came down to the fight, I did what I had to do.
Mm, yeah, of course. But your opponent himself, who goes by the name of, is it Daniel May Crooks or something?
I think it's
Crooks
Daniel.
May. What do you make of him? I mean, he talks about you being the far more experienced fighter. I mean, what do you make of his game plan, how he fights, his kind of the sort of technique he uses when he's in the cage?
Well, like I've done the research that I can. His only pro fight, I couldn't find any footage of, and his amateur fights were a couple of years ago. So he could have changed a lot since the last time I've actually seen any footage of him competing. From what I have seen, he's a game fighter. He's here to put on a show, and he isn't going to back down. Um, But as I said, he could have changed. He could have developed himself. I saw something about him moving gyms or he's training somewhere else now. So he's going to be bringing new things in, and it's the pro scene. You know, we're constantly evolving. There's new things going on, and we'll just get in there and see what we can do. I feel like I've got everything in my favor, so we'll go out there and get another win.
How has fight camp been? Has the weight cuts come easy? I mean, fighters have told me again and again and again, even though they may not compete, but I do train with them the odd one time. But I've been hearing a lot that the weight cut is always the hardest to do, especially if you're fighting the lightweight divisions.
You know, I've never had any issues when it comes to cutting weight. At amateur, you know, I walked around at the weight that I fought at pretty much. And turning pro, that first weight cut, I came in well underweight because of how easy it was to make weight. I wasn't expecting the weight to drop off the way it did. I feel like I could make featherweight if I wanted to. It's not something I think I'll test, but I mean, I was closer to featherweight than I was lightweight in my last weigh-ins.
Have you ever considered maybe that you'd like to compete in other weight divisions? Maybe, you know, that would probably make the weight cut less harsh and strenuous and stressful on your actual physical self body.
Well, as I said, like I've had no issues.
Okay.
Coming down to lightweight has been so easy. You know, I'm working with some of the best there is. So I'm prepared and I'm doing everything the way it should be done. So when the weight cut comes down to it, I have no issues. I'm refueled and I'm ready to go as soon as I've got a fight.
Can you talk a bit about your gym also? The I think coming out of Gloucester,
Yeah.
what's the name? Is it the
It's
Range
Range
Martial
Academy.
Arts? Yeah.
Yeah. So what is it you want to know about range?
No,
Sorry.
no, just if you can talk a bit about the gym because, well, the gym and the team, I've got to get that right because it's not just a gym. When you're talking about the fighting, it's not just a gym, but it's also a team as well. That'll be the fighters' corner people. Um, just talk a bit about it. Any big names that we should be anticipating to see stepping into the cage, and not just in the amateur scene, but also in the pro scene. Because looking at your results, it's very impressive.
Well, if you're looking at the pro scene, you've got my teammate Christian Leroy Duncan. He's
Yeah.
fighting on UFC the week after, well, next week. So, you know, that's gonna be a big fight. He'll be one to look out for. And the amateur scene, you know, we've got a lot of guys. For the how big Gloucester is compared to other cities, you know, we've got a lot of fighters coming in. No other pros at the moment, well, actually, we got one. We got a guy called Zana Calorie who's just turning pro. Really good fighter. I think he's coming down to lightweight as well now. He's fighting on golden ticket, I believe. So he'll be one to watch out for. Really, really strong, very explosive, and unorthodox. So it'll be a good fight to see him.
I always do want to talk about, always do want to at least touch on the background of the fights and fight wise, the people you have coaching you, nutrition, sparring, pad work, and your ground game jiu-jitsu, BJJ, because behind every successful fighter, there's always a team of really, really good, loyal people supporting that fighter in every way possible so they can compete to be the best.
Yeah,
Um,
well,
go ahead.
inside
Go
the
ahead.
inside the gym, you know, we've got my head coach Mark Weir, ex UFC. I mean, he's been everywhere. Cage Rage. He's done all the shows that you can think of. Pioneer the sport realistically. So I've got a very good head coach, a lot of experience, and then I've got my padwork coach, which is Dan Wisford. Again, really good. Corners Christian. He's cornering me for this fight coming up, so I'm quite fortunate there. And then I've got another coach, Jay Marshall, who does my MMA again, more grappling side. Another experienced coach, never competed, but in the gym, you know, he's got a lot of experience coaching. And outside the gym would be I've got Paul Reed, who's my nutrition and S&C coach. You know, he's working with some of the biggest there is. You've got Paddy Pimblett, Molly McCann. So I'm fortunate to have him. And I'll say it, my partner, Dana, she does all my nutrition as well, make sure everything's on point.
Like she's a blue belt in BJJ.
Yeah, that's correct. She's a blue belt in jiu-jitsu. She's come over to the MMA side a little bit since we've been together, but I think her passion's still jiu-jitsu.
I think does it help when by your partner is in one way or the other, even maybe if they're not involved in mixed martial arts or in the discipline that you're competing in, if they're involved in combat sports at least as a whole, I think that does that help at all? Because there will be more understanding if maybe you gotta be away for maybe not just to compete elsewhere, but maybe to corner another fighter, train another fighter, maybe.
Oh, do you know what? It's a massive help. Without her, things would be a lot harder. As I said, she's doing all of my nutrition. She's connecting me with the right people. She's in the sport in the right areas. As I said, she trains jujitsu, but she actually works with the English MMA Association. So she's like put on shows like the Four Nations that I've competed on, gone to the IMAFs. So she's there in amongst some of the best amateurs and working with some of the best in the business when it's nutrition, coaches, S&C. So she's got all the connections that help.
Mm. Well, you give me a good idea for the next guest I should have on the podcast next. Definitely.
Yeah,
Um, Look, it's the first time me speaking to you. I almost got carried away with everything, but can I ask you to kind of just give a brief backstory on your background and how you got into combat sports, and then more specifically, getting into mixed martial arts?
yeah. So I've done martial arts since I was about 6 or 7 years old. Started off with karate, just your standard traditional martial arts. I had no interest in competing or anything like that as I grew up. I left martial arts altogether to play rugby. I was playing rugby for a long time, went to quite a decent level, moved to Manchester, and that's kind of where it all began with MMA for me because I had an accident while I was at uni and I almost lost my right leg. I had sepsis, loads of surgery. And after that, I had to move back home and like just get myself back on track, get my health back. And while I was here, my friend was fighting and training in MMA. So I decided to come along, just, get myself back in shape. I was probably the heaviest and the most out of shape I'd ever been. So for me, it was just a get in there, get better. And within 12 months, I was having my first fight. I become obsessed. I lost my debut. I fought again a few weeks later and I won that one. And it was the beginning of something that has become my passion. There's nothing else I would want to do. I want to leave my job. I want to train full time. I want to fight and I want to one day coach.
You say you became obsessed with it. Was it that, I don't know, when you did maybe the first your first pad session, um that it felt quite therapeutic? Maybe you had a bad day, a bad week, you can kind of this is a way to vent out that frustration.
Partially, I think it was for me, the concept was after my injury and everything with my leg, I was told I wouldn't do sports again. So to even be competing for me in training, to even be training properly was like a massive win. Um, and then the obsession came after the first fight. I wasn't even sure if I wanted to fight at first. After that loss, I was like, I have to have another one. There's no way I can go out on an 0-1. And then then you get the 1-1, and you get the good feeling of winning. And that obsession just kept growing and growing to the point where it was I want to fight as often as possible. I had 14, 15 fights in 12 months.
I like the story you just told there about your injury that you had, and then you were told you never compete or play sports again. But when you started competing, when you started training, it felt like you had defied the odds, you had defied the professionals who had said, no, there's no way you will see you competing in any kind of sport. I mean, what did that feel like? In fact, have you ever crossed paths with the person who told you that you'd never ever play sports again?
No, so as I said, I was in Manchester when I had the injury. I was at university, and I was at Salford Royal Hospital. So I haven't been up there since. Um, don't think I'll ever see that person again. But if they ever see me on the telly, and I don't think they'd recognize me, but if they did, you know,
Mm.
maybe
No.
one day.
Yes, yes. I hope so because it'll feel good and they'll be squirming and just feeling awkward while you shake their hand and say, whilst they're congratulating you on such a terrific career. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's carry on.
No, no, please continue. I think there's a delay or latency in the connection, so.
Okay. I was just gonna say, like at the end of like for the professional that said it, they have to. I think they say it with the term of they don't want to get your hopes up in some ways. Um, it's that kind of acceptance and knowing that, but at the same time, it's that determination that can bring you back from it and get you going again.
This coming Saturday, at Cage Wars, the fight card is I'll say it's reasonably stacked, and they always put on an entertaining event. Which of the fights are you yourself? I mean, of course, you're going to be fighting on that card, but which of the other fights are you, as in, looking forward to seeing? Because there's some quite fairly well-known names. There's James Webb, Harris, there's Matthew Elliott, and there's Jimmy Quinn. I mean, which of the fighters are you hoping to at least witness their bouts?
Um, the fights that I'd like to see would be it's Thomas Paul, from London, the Deaf fighter. Um, I like seeing him fight. I like the fact that
Mhm.
he's doing something and showing like his last fight. You saw the way he was fighting and communicating with his coach, and I think it's phenomenal. And Jordan Vucenic, I want to see him fight. He's moved up to lightweight. He's a very good fighter, a very experienced fighter, and I like his style. So I'd like to see him fight.
Yes, Thomas Paul, a very, very unique fighter. I think well, as far as I know, is he probably the only deaf MMA fighter in the UK and in the whole world?
I'm not sure if he's the only one in the world, but in the UK, he's the only one that I know of.
Mm. No, it's a very, very unique human being. That's another example of defying all the odds and doing something you love and competing in it. Um, so I think last but by no means least, no, actually there was a question that came up in my DMs when I asked my followers and those who I communicate with what I should ask you, and there's one that stood out to me. How do you handle a loss in the fight game? As in, because I do know that there's a lot of these trolls online who and naysayers who come out and start to bash the fighter and just start to talk lots of shit in your ear and stuff. It's not pleasant. But for you yourself, how do you take that? How do you handle it?
Um, to be honest, like online, I've not really experienced any trolls. I think in my amateur career, it's not really something that happens. In my one pro fight, obviously I won that one by split decision. I had people that were making comments, just trying to get at me about that, but it doesn't really affect me at all. I'm there to fight, and they're not in the cage. I am. So if they think they're so good and they know better, they should be in there.
No one's ever riled you up as to the point whereby you actually turned around and said, "Look, you don't compete, you don't fight, so you don't know what it's like to go in there. Even if I didn't win, at least I had the balls to go in there and do my very, very utmost best. You just sit on the sidelines talking nonsense and talking shit and making all this noise, but you would never have the balls to do what I did."
I don't think I've responded to anyone like that. No. I might have commented like to people talking, but nothing along the lines of that. And I've only ever had one person who's ever really rattled me up, but it wasn't about losing. It was because I beat them and they wanted a rematch.
Ah, interesting. Ah, I see. That was from another fellow fighter.
Yeah, that was a fellow fighter that I competed against in the amateur scene. Just someone that I dislike. He's not an athlete. He's just someone who likes to think he is. Thinks he's an MMA fighter, but no, he's not.
And he shall remain anonymous. That's fine.
Yeah.
Of course. Um, what's again? Do, do, do. I can write this down, excuse me. Yes, What advice would you have for newer and upcoming younger fighters? Because again, with an amateur record like your own, um, really impressive, really good. I mean, what advice would you give them, those newbies coming onto the scene?
Uh, I would say to get as much experience as you can. Compete as much as you can at the amateur scene to prepare yourself for what you want to do in your pro. And don't restrict yourself on who you compete against. Don't just go regional. Go to the IMAFs, go to Emma and fight on the Four Nations or the qualifiers, because you might think you're fighting the best because you're winning all your fights. But in reality, if you're fighting only people that are in your area or within, 50, 60 miles, you're not experiencing what you should be experiencing before you turn pro.
I definitely. I think it's not just the fights themselves, but also going to different venues, different areas of a country, different parts of the world or so. I think different scenes, of course, the way the fight scene is there, the way that the crowds are there, fans are there, they're going to be very different to your home turf, what you're normally used to, I think.
Oh, 100%. When I went to IMAF, I think it was the last time. No, it was the third time I went. Went to Serbia, and I fought a Serbian in Serbia. And walking out, I got a lot of hate. The crowd were booing me. I'm fighting the hometown boy. That's the first time I've actually acknowledged the crowd properly and realized, geez, there's a lot of people that don't want me here. Uh, but it didn't bother me, like just get in there, get on with it. I lost that fight by split decision, and now me and the other guy that I competed against, we talk quite often. We're following each other's careers, so it doesn't
Nice.
mean anything.
I like that. Like, no matter what happens in the cage, you still have respect for your opponent.
Yeah,
No.
100%.
Last but by no means least, any shout outs you want to give to any sponsors, family affiliates, your partner, and even though I know you've only just started your professional career, any fighters you like to call out even?
Um, I'll thank everyone in my gym, all my coaches and teammates, and then my nutritionist, Paul Reed, and my partner, Dana. When it comes to sponsors, there's two that stand out, which is Gym High, which is a supplement company that have been supporting me for the last year, and Jim and Lake, who are new to come on. So thank you for both of those. And when it comes to calling anyone out, nah, I'm not. I'm not at that point in my career to be able to call people out. This is only my second fight. You know, win this one, make a statement, and then maybe I can turn some more heads and start getting some more higher profile opponents.
Thank you so much for coming on the show, Jordan. And guys, if you've watched the episode on YouTube to the full episode, please don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. It really does help the platform grow when you do that. And don't forget, you can also catch the audio versions of this episode on Spotify, iTunes, and Google Podcasts. Jordan, thank you once again. And I'm looking forward to seeing you on Saturday, 20th of July at Cage Warriors.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.